from Spain. Welcome, Ash. Welcome, Milani. And therefore, I would set a quick format that I will have certain questions for Siddiqui San, and I would love to get his detailed responses to the questions so that we all learn from his vast, versatile experience. I always learn whenever I have an opportunity to interact with him. And so is the case with many people in the country. And I would request you to put up your questions on the Q&A section, and I would pick up questions from all the platforms. And from the Zoom, I may even ask you to unmute your microphone and ask the questions. So that is the format, Siddiqui San, this evening. We will spend 1 hour together. We are delayed by 10, 12 minutes, but we'll spend 1 hour together. Mr. Siddiqui, we all know you as a very successful business leader with high level of impact on many businesses and stakeholders, employees, leadership, governing bodies of companies which you worked for. How has your journey been as an HR and business leader? I'd be more keen. In fact, the audience would like to know more about your beautiful, it may be tough also, difficult also, but you have mitigated it all the time. Beautiful journey of excellence as a business leader. Mr. Siddiqui, you have to unmute.
Thank you, DK. Really privileged to be with you on this leadership series. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I think this first question itself, slightly I will change. Journey of excellence, I'm not sure, but very enriching journey. That much I am very clear in my mind. God has been kind. About 40 years, 4 companies, very good companies. And DK getting opportunity to work with different kind of, colleagues, business leaders, multinationals, Japanese, Koreans, Americans, Italians, Europeans. So very varied kind of, I'll call it great luck, working with kind of global diversity and working in this beautiful professional field, human resources. I think we all basically originated from there, later on traveled to business. I think somewhere, if I recollect last 40 years and would like to sum it up, although very tough, but 4 or 5 key perspectives, consciously or unconsciously, come to my mind, which are highlighting the way I have operated. One particular perspective, which I have talked about it many years, is I have always maintained my own professional identity. Right when I joined Escorts as a trainee executive, even then I had my own view about certain things. And somewhere, this can be done only when you have your own thinking, your own clarity, your own homework, your own confidence, and maybe somewhere when you are ethically and professionally correct. Somewhere, perhaps, when I look at second perspective, accepting responsibility with very high willingness and full accountability, total ownership. That's how somehow I have been handling things in as if I own this company. I own this particular company. This is my entire responsibility. I may be just a manager. So that kind of ownership, but also maybe ability to adjust and adapt, because life will not be exactly as per your expectations in any such corporate settings. Third perspective, which I think I have found it very tough to handle, that we all as leaders like, to really work in very, very smooth, comfortable environment, but handling adversity is where the core character of leadership is tested, and you may become exposed in front of maybe thousands of people, maybe entire country, as it happened in case of Maruti, for example, 2012, 18 July to be precise. Somewhere perhaps looking at setting up a kind of a greenfield project like DCM Toyota in a place like Greater Noida, full of, very tough kind of local environment. So there maybe handling adversity is one perspective which I think I can see. I think I handled it well, perhaps. Maybe when I look at another very critical perspective is that alone you cannot do anything part of your career, part of your journey. I think you will be working with many people. You'll be working with your peers, with your juniors, with your seniors. So working with teams, nurturing them, getting the best out of them, including global teams in my case, has been one important learning which I would like to share here. And maybe when I look at working with multinationals, working with, say, for example, Toyota Japan, working with New Holland Fiat, part of Europe and US, then I think trust, transparency, and to a great extent, ethical reporting becomes the hallmark of success, which I think I did well. When I look back with great satisfaction, the relationships, the kind of responsibility with which I started, say, for example, in New Holland, and within few years, they kept on elevating things in such a big scale that even I got surprised. I think it all depends from the originating trust, mutual trust, transparency, which you bring in where you establish your leadership credibility. At the same time, perhaps when I look at some experiences dealing with people, very competent, very renowned CEOs in the Fiat group, like Mr. Quadrino, Italian, Giovanni Ravina, Louis Choca, very strong American, army-based guy I worked with as the president, global HR for New Holland, Case New Holland Global. Or maybe somebody like Mr. Bhargav, I'm working right now, kind of a founder of auto industry in India, great personality, almost a legendary status. Or somebody like a Japanese CEOs that I have worked here in Maruti last 18 years. Some, I think, you have to retain your own professional identity rather than getting overawed by these, very legendary figures with whom you work. And I have held my own, whether in corporate deliberations, whether in board meetings, taking a kind of a difference of opinion and real argument where you are holding your fort. I think somewhere in my thinking, it has helped big way in my journey last 40 years. One perspective, last but not the least, I think versus in my journey, this typical perspective of competing with others, trying to do better than the peers. I have never gone into that lane. I think being a sportsman, being a cricketer, as you said, I have been competing with myself. So many days I was very nasty with myself in the evening, returning back, abusing myself. But few days I was very happy with my work. So I got a drink for myself in the car itself while coming back from Gurgaon to. But few days. So somewhere competing with my work, yourself, competing with as a sporting kind of learning is where perhaps I see these 40 years. God has been kind, I said, very enriching, big learning, and meeting some great people.
Fantastic. I think in this short talk itself, there has been a lot of learning for people like us, as well as the audience, when you are talking about your own professional identity. And you talked about trust and transparency, talked about adjust and adapt, and you talked about adversity. Siddiqui-san, now, while you have been in this 4 decades of this, there would have been tough, we know about this, tough, difficult situations, adversities. How did you manage it, balance it out? Because there are expectations from employees, there are expectations from employers, there's expectation from the stakeholders, the board of directors, and there is expectation from the world of business who are watching you, especially when you hold at such strong position. So country watched you. How did you manage? How did you balance it out? It's so tough. I remember certain situations. What was your balancing to manage those adversities coming out and standing up again and making it happen? What makes you to do that?
DK, there is one thing, my big learning, which I would like to share in this regard is building the kind of leadership character and credibility. That means being fair and seen fair is the first essential prerequisite where your followers will accept your leadership will respect your decisions, will have tremendous trust and faith in what you decide for the company. Whether the top management board of directors, Suzuki head office in this case today, or whether 40,000 people in Maruti today. The same has been case with a smaller company like DCM Toyota, Toyota head office Japan, and then small top management group of the DCM group here and Japanese here, and maybe 1,000 people here. But I think this principle remains consistent in my thinking. Handling the local situation in Noida, Greater Noida, this credibility is where I have won most battles. This credibility was giving me the kind of guts and courage in communication to hold my viewpoint, what I think is right for people, for the community, for stakeholders, for my business. Very tough situations at times, very threatening situations at times. But I think this is one perspective which worked very well. Second is that I have never gone for reactive HR. I have always gone for proactive thinking HR. If I think this is the right way of doing things in DCM Toyota or New Holland, I would like to pitch in that way. Not that somebody is telling me go this way, go that way. I've never followed that kind of a approach. Or reacting to a crisis, I have never reacted. I will take my time. I will have my own thinking. My learning is, what I am sharing is, you should use your own capability, character, and mind with highest ownership and accountability to decide things. In DCM Toyota, I decided huge decisions. Mr. Vivek Batram and Mr. Avasthi never even looked at what my decision is. They will just simply sign. New Holland, Fiat, head office, US, same. They will say, you just check with Saklan, my first name, and he will approve. So what is that? That is credibility, character of leadership which you bring to the table over the years with your actions and with your intent and behavior. To a great extent, consistency of that credibility. Perhaps third perspective which I look at is that if you listen to your stakeholders with great empathy, with great sensitivity, listening leadership with youngsters, with workers, with union, with top management can give you a great measurement of what exactly is the issue. And then you can look at applying your mind as to what will be the best countermeasure, what will be the best HR strategy for that matter for this company, which will be solving this issue. There was one very funny situation which I faced. This was precisely 11th August 2003. I was facing this Maruti board for this one interview to get into Maruti as head of HR. One Japanese director asked me this question that, Mr. Siddiqui, we have got this shop floor unionized category compensation and benefits going up over the years. Big problem for us. So what will be your kind of recommendation on this? So I told Mr. Sugimori, I don't have any magical bag. I can give you a solution. When I come in, I'll think about it and I'll try to find a way. However, one principle you can remember, that if your bucket is filled with old water, then you must create a valve to remove this old water and create an inlet valve to bring some fresh water, 5,000-6,000 rupees per month type. That much in principle I can share, but rest I will discuss when I come in. That guy was quite taken aback with this kind of a very tough response coming to him. But I think that is what precisely I did. And what Maruti did without my suggestion, honestly. They did that VRS by the time I was joining in. And they brought out maybe 2,000 people who were not relevant to the scheme of things. So somewhere perhaps when I look at this kind of maybe listening leadership perspective, that can give you a lot of knowledge, new ideas, correct understanding. And maybe a kind of fourth perspective. I believe we can collaborative relationships, collaborative working, no ego, nothing. So in Maruti, the first thing which I created was my business peers, a forum I called the HR decision-making body, and everything we will decide together. And I think that was the first step, consciously or unconsciously, we built my success of this massive change of a public sector company to a private sector company in 5 years. Unheard of, absolutely competitive, vibrant, number one still after 38 years. The taste of the pudding is actually eating the pudding. So what I did in 2003 is what we are enjoying over the years, being a very competitive number one auto industry in the country. Maybe last but not the least, DK, I have treated HR as a business function. I have never treated HR as a staff function or a function in isolated identity. That is a big mistake which we do in the HR fraternity. When I talk of HR in Maruti or DCM Toyota or New Holland, I know the business very well. Then only I talk my HR strategy there. Without understanding the business framework, without understanding the operating profit or the EBITDA, I cannot offer any HR strategy to these companies. And then bring in my balance of people aspirations, what I expect as a business return to the kind of population which works for you. And that has worked very, very well so far. So perhaps when we look at adversity, when we look at dealing with boards, dealing with very tough situations, dealing with government, I think leadership, character, and credibility will work for always as a great kind of asset for you. But when you look at thinking HR, when you look at HR as a business function, when you take total ownership and accountability, I think you are bound to get that response and respect from people around you.
Wonderful. In fact, that's a very great lesson to youngsters, young HR leaders who are at various positions in the corporate world. Character, consistency, and capability, and then handling teams and listening to teams. The issue is more of listening from your teams, and leadership is very beautifully you have said, Siddiqui Saad. Leadership is listening to people and then building team and building trust. And this important factor, which is very, very essential and very critical, BC, DC, or AC before COVID or during COVID or after COVID is business. HR is business, and which you say you have been driving, and we all know you have been driving not only in Maruti, even before that, before those organizations where you worked. That's a key learning, Siddiqui-san. Siddiqui-san, now we know Maruti is a trendsetter. We know Maruti is a trendsetter not only for automobile industry, but for the entire industry in the country. What happens in Maruti? People start looking at that, what best practices, what's happening there, what they have started doing it. And under your leadership, because your style of leadership has been to look for something new, to look for something innovative. And I mean, what are you proud of? One or two innovative things you did for business HR in Maruti, and which you feel proud of, that these are a couple of 2-3 initiatives which really set the direction for the industry in the country.
Yeah, I think DK, lucky, as I said at the beginning, to work with some great people. One such gentleman was, when I joined Maruti, was Mr. Jagdish Khattar, a very, excellent professional IES guy and the managing director and CEO of Maruti. Intelligent, very, very strong kind of accountability, kind of a, superior. And we had a great relationship going very, very fast. And he asked me that for our dealerships to be competitive 5-7 years down the line, you will have to bring in the basic functional HR maturity in these 300 odd dealership companies of Maruti. Dealers were basically entrepreneurs, people, either their father or they have built great businesses, so they're confident. And dealers felt that they know every damn thing. They know their business, they know IT, legal, everything that dealers, you thought that I am the best in the world, there is nobody who can challenge. That is the fraternity I'm talking about. And I was wondering what to do with them. Then we created a template, which is my big, big achievement, learning, an element of pride. Created a template, how to handle them for 2.5 days, so that we bring into their mind a business kind of perspective of HR strategic advantage in competing environment 5-7 years down the line. Very tough. But that template which we conceptualized, that was basically deliberations with the dealer CEOs over 2.5 days, and making them realize the deficit of poor human resources approach which they were using in their setups, but were gaining profits of 100 rupees. And I asked them this question through their template: if I make it 300, how exactly is going to appeal to you? And dealers will only understand this language of cash by the time The clock said 7 o'clock in the evening, how much I have made. So we created that template around that financial kind of EBITDA of a dealership, that what will be good HR, what will be average HR, what will be exploitative HR. So somewhere, I think it became a rage. And I think I still remember that Prince Augustine from Mahindra said that you would like to copy this template. I said, by all means, because this knowledge is to be shared with people. There's no personal property involved for me or for Maruti. If you want to become competitive, you have the capability, you do it yourself. So Mahindra did it, Tata's did it, and it became a kind of a recipe that today when you see an auto dealership, in our case, roughly about 2,800 or 3,000 outlets, they are very professionally competent on people. They are very competitive on people. And therefore, when you see Nexa, you will find even a sharper kind of reflection of what we did in 2005, 6, 7, for 4 years, that kind of investment. Something similar happened with a lot of IR problems on the supplier side. 430, 40 odd supplier companies pan India. And we did this template in a different way, not focusing on EBITDA and profits, but focusing on human resource management, focusing on ethical perspective of leadership, creating this compelling, relationship between unions and management. And today, perhaps we have traveled in the last maybe about 10 years for about 40, 50 IR situations every year in supplier companies to 3 or 4 today. Shift which has happened. And it has gone right up to Suzuki head office, that they wanted that we should do something similar for Japanese companies which are looking for investing into India, which we did that. And that, I think, is an element of pride. However, perhaps when we look at the start of Maruti, 2003, for me to join in, bringing this, shift from a public sector to a private sector, the first ever top management training which happened in in Bangalore, was for our Japanese directors a kind of memory, which they said that maybe they are going for this kind of a leadership development after 30 years. Somebody said after 27 years. For Mr. Khattar, was mighty excited that as an IES guy, the MD CEO, he is going to be now trained by Dr. Pritam Singh and Dr. Bhandarkar and Mr. Siddiqui, some such thing. And the senior management team, all my peers, we took them to Europe for 15 days. And they all felt that it is impossible that Suzuki Japan will approve Europe training while it's a Japanese company. And it happened. They were mighty happy, the Suzuki at all. We will take them out and change them. So again, today when I look back, great kind of element of pride, maybe bringing things like 360-degree framework, assessments for leaders, bringing in the variable pay in Maruti 2010, and many first. So a lot of this thing. But however, how it happened, provided you believe in experimentation, provided you are capable of taking risk. If you are an explorer, if you are a shirker, you will not be able to have innovative leadership impact. You cannot have transformational leadership if you cannot take risks. So I did take this risk of 360-degree with all my senior fraternity, around 30, 40 people, including MD and Japanese directors. For the Japanese directors, we did this 360-degree in Japanese language. But I said, all of us will have to undergo this change. And it clicked. So somewhere you fail also, I have failed also in some such new, innovative methods, which is okay, because 9 times out of 10 you are doing well, 1 time you fail, no problem. Next time we'll try again. So a lot of learning which I can share in this perspective is background is that capability to take risk. You believe in experimentation. You like, youngsters talking to you with a third eye perspective. As I said, listening leadership, you can get multiple ideas, and somewhere you can look at exploring life beyond the routines.
Fantastic. I think that's fascinating. And in fact, there's no doubt that these two innovative HR practices are now part of not only automobile industry in the country, but I know many other companies in in the country who are following these practices. And in fact, at that point of time, when you did it for dealers, you changed entrepreneurs into real CEOs, professional outlook. was given to these dealers as well as vendors, which are basically SMEs, which gave them a lot of cultural, and business transformation. Fantastic, fascinating. Siddiqui-san, when I look at
DK, there's one perspective I just wanted to add. There's one small thing, which is that while we are looking at some of these innovative practices on the human resources side, in New Holland as well as in Maruti also, I created a strategy forum, which is a quarterly forum, which only the top guys will meet, including the Japanese directors and the Indian top guys, and will only look at a strategic perspective of business, not what we are doing today. Very difficult, very tough. And a HR guy leading that kind of a business strategy forum is something simply totally not, what we are accustomed to. When I look at some of these principles of representing HR as a business function, then perhaps one example I will talk to you, part of this strategy forum of Maruti in 2007, 2008, is that we fixed a principle that the operating profit in our company will always be 7%, not below 7%. If it goes below 7%, then we'll create a big noise and create an emergency into the company. That principle has worked for many years, what I created at that point of time. And somewhere, I think my learning is that if you go deep diving into the business framework and the kind of drivers, the business environment, what is happening around, and then look at whether it is HR or whether it is marketing or whatever, and they decided 2008 that finance will report to you, legal will report to you, IT will report to you. I'm not a finance guy, I'm not an IT guy, and neither I'm a legal guy. But 2008, they said, no, this is all will report to you. You operate as chief operating officer. Somewhere my learning is that what you bring to the table will come back to you in terms of credibility, in terms of recognition. You don't have to do a demo of selling yourself. You don't have to push it. You don't have to compete with others, as I said earlier. I think what you can do is bring value to the table.
wow, we all know you. We see you going, growing, and glowing all the time. However, having most tough situation and mitigating them, and not easy. It's very, very tough. You are alone at wherever you are sometimes. Siddiqui-san, when we look at you, and you continuously kept raising the bar of excellence at the organizations you worked. At the same time, as a nation building process, you have been part of various bodies, professional bodies, be it FECI or CI or ALMA, and the president of National HRD Network, and contributing continuously. The schedules have been so tough, back to back, and even on weekends. I have seen your schedules, even on weekends, getting into various programs. And one side handling the business environment of your own organization, then the industry, and then these professional bodies to the nation building process. What's your motivational fit, boss? What drives you? What you are today, so respected, and we all salute you for what you are. And personally, I have a lot of great respect for you. I mean, what motivates you so much? Who's your role model? How did you get into this? And your motivational fit, Mr. Siddiqui's motivational fit.
Actually, to a great extent, if you look at anyone's career, my thinking is something maybe which I can share is first of the half of the career we work for ourselves, for our fee, for our needs, That's what I did actually. But speaking, the second half of 20 years, I was looking at building my institution, my people. Was this end of year, I am looking at building my country, my community. Simple thinking, what I look at. And somewhere being very, very, contrived or constrained in your selfish pursuits and perspectives is not my way of thinking at all. So second half is let go. Second half is giving back to the community. National HRD Network 11 to 13, I was the national president. And 2012 was this crisis at our company, IR crisis. Very, very bad crisis. Very big adversity I handled at that point of time. But I think to a great extent, if your attitude, intent, and character is clear in terms of your priorities, I think you will be motivated. NHRDN, CII, ASSOCHAM, FICCI, wherever, all the kind of universities, schools, wherever we are involved. Basic process is, can we build a younger talent? My biggest excitement is working with young people. I think just a couple of weeks back, I addressed 260 odd students of IIM Trichy. I think I had the most exciting 2 hours spending time with those youngsters because they are going to define our country, our kind of future of our India, great kind of economic potential, growth potential, and this thing. That maybe you can see Jack Welch building G through the youngsters and spending that kind of executive coaching focus is one perspective. Second perspective is that to a great extent you are getting an opportunity to network with very different kinds of professionals, people. And in my thinking, there has been tremendous learning if you listen to people, if you are flexible, listen to even youngsters. Listen to somebody like Santrut or somebody like Dwarka, Arvind Agarwal. I think always you are going to gain Satish Pradhan, Rajiv Dubey, some youngsters. They may be very young people into HR or business, but they may give you something reverse mentoring. So to a great extent, a kind of an inside out approach, outside in approach, maybe a 360-degree kind of personality you can call, is what I will recommend. Leaders should not be ego driven. I, me, myself. I think that is waste of time. If forward you are going to look at this 360-degree leadership, assimilating leadership, modesty, simplicity, somebody who can be a role model, who can walk the talk, that is going to work. And there's one funny incident which I talked to you with one of my peers, business peers, you know him very well, in Maruti, once asked me, these young engineers, 300 people, these buggers who have joined, they don't even say morning to me in the morning. I said, yeah, they will say good morning to you in the morning, just because you are designated as ED or senior ED or whatever. I think you'll have to earn their respect by exciting them, giving them experiences, learning, hand-holding. Then they say, good morning, Mr. XYZ. Designation game is not going to work in this. It is, I think I'm telling you about 10, 12 years back. But post-COVID, what I am seeing is this compassionate leadership in Maruti in middle May. We decided to reboot, recover, start again. First priority, people, their health and safety, including their families. We will do operations later. We will build up, no problem. So maybe did 15,000 cars. June, another 20, 30,000 cars. But our focus was not diverted towards building operations for profits. People, people, people. But what happened is people motivated, committed, element of pride for Maruti. Suddenly we started jacking up great business results. July, August, September. We really, really got pleasantly surprised. October, we are going to make our best efforts. And we are looking at second half of the year as a major opportunity for recovery for Maruti. Because people are so motivated, so much committed. They have seen the management caring for them, for their families, with whatever support is required. First, let us look at top people safety and health. As late as this afternoon, 2 o'clock, top management, 4 or 5 people. Mr. Siddiqui, first top priorities people, regional officers, people selling cars, people making cars, supply chain. Don't allow travel. That kind of concern, care. And I think it, to a great extent, gives me great pleasure that while we are building maybe 2003 for a kind of great performance for the company, now we are building a Maruti which should be, really going strong for next 15 years.
Wow. Fascinating, Siddiqui Saad. I think you talked about this during COVID and in fact, even after COVID, compassion. But I'm here looking at, because these days there's a lot of discussion going on to be compassionate and to be agile in business, driving business with agility, and while being compassionate. How do you see these two, compassion and agility, coming together and making it happen? Well, especially I would say when you are going to look at SMEs, small companies, 50 crores, 100 crores, 150 crores, 20 crores, 300 crores, and how do they, balance between compassion and agility in business?
I think DK, in terms of our learning from our head office, Japan, and working with our Japanese colleagues, especially Mr. Kenichi Ayukawa, the managing director, and I think I am personally impressed, very big learning. They had no confusion in their mind is to first priority to be given to the employee health and safety. That is what we have been communicating to our suppliers, to our dealers, new SOPs as per the government kind of guidance coming in MHA or the state government, even going better than that. That is number one. So there is no confusion with agility or pushing business there. Second perspective is flexibility. In a COVID recovery, you cannot be dictating terms how I will like to do business. You will have to adapt and adopt. All the time, keep this flexibility on. How we are going to handle almost 700 supplier plants across the country, outside the country, in Japan, in Europe. You cannot dictate there. You will have to be flexible to adjust and adapt and then roll out kind of business plans what we have. When we look at this agility, first perspective is the flexibility. Second perspective is support. Maruti has supported its dealers, its suppliers in a big way, not only guiding, but also financially. When we look at this agility, we also look at capability to adjust and adapt to this digital explosion, to look at this work from home perspective, to look at instead of traveling, this WebEx and Zoom and everything, if it is working, why not we do a virtual visit, which I did yesterday, of Kalpeta, which is a Wayanad in Kerala. But I was sitting in my head office and I was seeing that entire place visually on this virtual platform. I visited that dealership which we have bought. So I wanted to see for myself how much is the space, what is the kind of place, what is the need for you to travel 2 days to go to Wayanad and see that place for 1 hour and come back another, flight 5 hours, 8 hours. What is the purpose? So capability to adjust and adapt with great flexibility of this thing. Look at supporting your business partners, all your stakeholders, including Haryana government, including Gujarat government. Maruti making ventilators means what? Is bringing it back to our country when they need it. Yeah, they don't need cars at that point of time. They needed ventilators. So fine, we will do that. Mask, we will do that. They need food, we will do that. What is the problem? April, May, June, we have got enough 40 years of doing business and making profits. It's a great learning from our Japanese colleagues and from the Japan as a country is what I can perhaps share.
Yes, brilliant. And the way you are shared the entire concept of leadership, what you have been exhibiting and working. Boss, I have last question before we go to the, our attendees. Now, you have been a sportsman and you yourself played cricket, you promoted cricket. What has cricket shown you as a leader? Because normally, as a sportsman, you pick up a lot of skills. And I want to know from you, and let it be known to others who are watching you or are going to be watching you when it's recorded available on these channels. What has cricket given to you? What is sports? As a sportsman, Siddiqui San, what did you get out of this sports? And how did you use that, apply that in the corporate world?
First thing is, which is very easiest, is we have no ego as sports people because we were so many times, we were winning, and so many times next day we were losing. So, everything revolves around this team game. A big learning is that you are attached with 20 odd people to win a game. And perhaps when we look at cricket, which has been my passion, I think one big learning on leadership has been that you will have to build a team, you'll have to nurture a team, you'll have to make that team deliver to its optimum best talent. First lesson of leadership, which we forget in corporate. You are all the time, after people demanding accountability, but you are not building the team, you are not nurturing the team, you are not taking care of the empathy or the kind of empowerment or the kind of appreciation. And then the only time they come and say for example, that I would want to, what happened to that particular thing? You only demand business coaching. The other part which I look at, perhaps this team spirit and being very fair in what you do with people, because sometimes I fail but my other people do well in cricket, so they take care of me that evening because you feel bad. When I do well and somebody else doesn't do well, then I take care. So in our case, the rule was whoever makes 100 or a 50 or 5 wickets, he will give the party that evening to the rest of the team, not the ones who did not perform. So great teamwork, great team spirit. Your total attitude undergoes a huge change towards life. Maybe when we are looking at sports, I think we take it lightly, but I have heard Harsha Bogle and I have heard some other very prominent people. They talk of this sports strategy actually meeting a lot of similarities with the corporate strategy, business strategy. And there are instances in which game to play in what kind of a strategy, what kind of team to be selected, how exactly you are going to handle a test match or a one-day international or T20. It's all totally different strategy. And somewhere perhaps is a kind of learning you unconsciously bring into the company. But maybe when you talked of handling adversity, I think when you lose a very tough match, very tough tournament, it's very difficult to, keep your composure. Handling pressure that you want to get 15 runs in the last over and you are at the other end, 30, 40,000 people watching you in big games. In our games, maybe 300 people, 400 people. But there is pressure. So you are trained to handle adversity because you are trained to handle pressure. And somewhere, perhaps, you still want to be ethically correct. You don't want to win by gambling or by doing wrong things. And maybe I think there was this great opportunity spending some time with Steve Waugh in Macau in one of our dealer conferences. It was memorable. I also met in some such this thing, Martina Navratilova. What they talk about, great champions, great leaders, what they talk about. Steve Waugh said, always train as number two. Never train like you are number one. For Maruti, we are number one. But he says you must always prepare and train as if you are number two. And he said that 1% extra is always better. So don't say that I am 99% on the top. Better it is to clock that 100% also. That is what Maruti has been doing. Very clear 50% market share. Not 49.5%. That is not acceptable. That is the kind of intent and attitude. And maybe somewhere, perhaps, one big learning which I can share, which has worked for me well, is in sports, you win sometimes and you lose sometimes.
Yeah.
You will not win all the time in 40 years. So you must gracefully learn that when you lose, how to pick up the threads, come back and compete again. I have done that 3 times in my 40-year career. Gone down, then again gathered the kind of steam, come back. What Mr. Amitabh Bachchan is saying on Kaun Banega Crorepati, from a upset or setback, create a comeback, something like that. Sports gives a great learning on that kind of perspective.
To fall is not a failure. It is only when you do not get up again. When you get up again, there's no failure. My God, fascinating sports, leadership skills in terms of building, nurturing, empathy, and having a composure when you're losing, and then getting up and taking forward. Siddiqui-san, I don't know what to say, but I can tell you that another a powerful leadership session, the new DNA of leadership concept you have shared with us. And I am personally thankful to you, and I have some questions coming in. And let me pick up the question. And it is, oh, uh, Farooq Onichizada from Afghanistan. I can unmute you. You can ask the question. Who else is there? Yeah, Anshul, I can unmute you. Farooq, I think, is not there. You can go ahead and ask your question. Anshul is the
Yeah,
director of business school from Mumbai.
yeah,
Yeah.
good evening, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
yeah, yeah.
Great. First of all, thank you, Bakshi sir, for this virtual meet with Siddiqui sir. It's after a long time. I think I met him during one of the IMA's, conference there in Delhi. And it's really privilege having you meeting virtually, both of you. And thanks again, Bakshi sir, for the same. And Siddiqui sir, my question to you is, see, so much of work is being done by Maruti Suzuki for women empowerment, and whatever I know, it's been done in the terms of organizing some driving camps or service camps exclusively for women, wherein they have been given some kind of offers and some promoting or some safety related material. Yet, as the trend setting organization, I just want to understand what are the women centric policies that Maruti has created in terms of empowering women, that by providing them employment or skill enhancement program that will lead some income generation and making them financially independent. So can you please share something that is being done exclusively for women? And because being automobile giant, it is something still not being very welcoming for this particular gender. So
Okay, I think that's a very good perspective you have raised, but my view is slightly different, and that is what I did in 2003 2004 as the first initiative, that I opened up the HR strategy of Maruti for employing female talent
yeah,
in every sphere of life. Say for example, engineering talent, talent in supply chain, marketing and sales, against the earlier belief of women will not do this, women will not be fit for this. All that we scrapped, and 2004 onwards, the talent pipeline included uh, equal opportunity for selection. That is first basic premise. Second perspective is that we have offered equal opportunities for nurturing and development to all our people, whether male or female. But for females, development opportunities we have increased deliberately for them to fast pace into the kind of department head roles or senior management roles. And that process has got a little element of special bias. Apart from that, I have always communicated to our female talent in Maruti and even otherwise outside Maruti that women professionals should not expect any special bias or treatment or favor from any company or government or anybody. They should compete on equal terms. That will be the real.
absolutely, absolutely, yeah,
And to a great extent in Maruti today, I see a lot of talent after 17 years of my investment into this kind of thinking, who are brimming with confidence, with capability to rub shoulders with the best in the world, including our Japanese colleagues. And I think our future is bright that some of those females will be holding top positions in the company. This nudging we have also done in the hiring process and in the development process. Beyond that, no special policy or protection apart from whatever a good professional company or management should bring in, whether it is posh or whether it is a lot of involvement and kind of transparency in communication and maybe giving opportunities to people to grow. When we give opportunities to people to get promoted, we don't know whether he's a male or a female. Whoever is the most competent must make it. That is the kind
okay,
of environment which we have created, and it has worked well so far.
Anshu, thank
thank
you
you.
so much. Good for your business school. You got a good idea.
Yeah,
Ash Raina from Brisbane, Australia, wanted to have a question. Ash, go ahead.
Thanks, DK. Hi, Siddiqui sir. Ash Rana from
I
Brisbane.
Yes, please.
Good to hear you. Good to hear you about your thoughts on empathy and compassion and keeping your ears and eyes open. Thanks for that. I believe in that, so that's why I'm appreciating that from you.
Right.
I have a question on the team building and when you talked of cricket. Now I have to shift my game from badminton to cricket. I think that I have to change because I play badminton these days.
Right.
Having said that, though we played doubles, so we still have teamwork in there.
Oh, yes.
So I just wanted to ask you a couple of things. One is about Maruti Suzuki when they came to India, obviously with Suzuki as a brand, and now it is just Suzuki, right? Uh, Something similar has happened in Australia. I'm based in Australia. Something
Right.
similar has happened in Australia in terms of General Motors and Holden. So Holden used to be a part of General Motors, and what General Motors did this year is they
Yeah.
stopped the production, which means that Holden brand in Australia, as an example, is zero. It
Right.
stops from now on. They will still give service and support for the next couple of years, but then the brand is gone. Now, when you start a brand from being a national brand like Maruti in India and Holden in Australia, and when the GM or Suzuki for that matter takes their hands off, then you are left with zero. Now, how do you mitigate that risk?
To a great extent, Parath, when we look at Maruti, the initial part, 10, 12 years was basically government of India was the majority share owner of Maruti, almost 74%, and 26% was coming into technical collaboration contribution from Suzuki Motors Japan. And 1992, after about 10 years, it became a 50-50 joint venture between government of India and Suzuki Japan. And 2003, when I was about to come in, just before that, government decided to disinvest. So Suzuki became 54% ownership of Maruti, and government started exiting 10%, then 5%, then zero by 2006. And that is the reason I was called in as a private sector HR lead role to come and bring this change. However, when we look at this entire journey of 37 years, including these three phases, I think one perspective, which is my learning, which I am sharing with you, is that any country you enter into for business, which Suzuki did entering into India in 1982, you'll have to respect the social structure, social milieu of that country to be successful in long-term perspective. If you are a fly-by-night operator, then the examples which you are giving can be best examples. But if you are looking at a great success story like Maruti Suzuki, that in Japan, today it is referred as one of the global benchmarks for a investment kind of strategy and a relationship with a joint venture, including the government of India, and people follow this blindly that this is the best recipe. So one is that understanding the social structure, respecting the social milieu. Second is, I think always multinationals make one mistake is they try to come and dominate with their parent company culture, parent country culture, parent head office culture. In Maruti, it was reverse. It was the India culture trying to learn from Japan, customized, led by people like Mr. Bhargav, a legendary status, and great acceptability by Mr. O Suzuki and other Japanese chairman of O Suzuki San from Suzuki Motors Corporation Japan, that don't impose anything. Let it evolve. If they want to learn, then we will share our learning with them. Great shift. And somewhere what we developed over the years is where government identified with the company and the product, people identified with the company and the product, and the employees started identifying with the company and the product. Therefore, the success of last 37 years, and there is nothing like a risk mitigation strategy. We have acquired this competence of car making over 37 years, which is our capability today. But we still believe in this great collaborative relationship with our parent company, that means with our father, that is Suzuki Motor Corporation. Although they are doing 6-7 lakhs per year and we are doing 17-18 lakhs per year, so the son or the daughter has gone ahead of the father many years back, and we are going to look at 3 million, and then we are going to look at 50 lakh per year by 2030 or 2032,
Mhm.
whereas Suzuki, our father, will be aging by that time.
Thanks,
So
Siddiqui
this
sir.
relationship continues.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ash. We have Farouk Kunichizada from Afghanistan. You can raise your question, whatever you've written.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
afternoon.
Special thanks for Mr. Dicky to connect me in this event, and also a special salam from Afghanistan to Mr. Siddiqui Said.
Walaikum salam. Thank you so much.
I'm really impressed by your talk, Mr. Siddiqui. Thank you to sharing everything with us.
Entirely my
I
pleasure.
I have a short question that you know that in Afghanistan we face so many challenges, including security challenges, unemployment, and also discrimination against women, human rights violation, women rights violation, many challenges we have here. I hope that you know about that, and also I think that you hear from media and also from other TV about Afghanistan. So my question is about that, how you can support on the women empowerment in Afghanistan. Also, Mr. Diki, in the past, he supported more Afghan women and he conducted various kinds of training, workshops, and he traveled several times to Afghanistan and supported women here. So, you know that I'm the leader of Afghan community here in north of Afghanistan, in Mazar-e Sharif. If you come in Afghanistan along with Mr. Diki, I'm very honored and very welcome you. And if you invite me to come to India and to visit from your company, and if you share some information how to you are working and how you are leading your company and the people, I will be very happy for that. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. You have raised a very interesting perspective. I think in this kind of a very tough situation, capability building in the real context for the women in Afghanistan, in my thinking, is the best way forward. Building capability will bring in not only capability, but also confidence, the intent, how to face this kind of a transition and transformation. And whenever I talk about this Maruti's transformation from a public sector government company to private sector, it took me 5 years to make that transition. But when we look at your country and the kind of challenges which you just mentioned, and when we talk of women empowerment, it may be a longer journey. But I think somewhere we have to make that effort consistently with great motivation. It will be my honor and privilege if I can be of any way, either there in Afghanistan or helping you here in India. I think it can be done both ways. What we have done in our case, in our company and many other companies, sometimes we go to outside country and support it there. And sometimes we bring them here to expose them in our country and prepare them for this kind of capability and maybe a much better attitude towards fighting out this tough situation. Either way, I'll try to work out with DK what best we can contribute. Will be a great honor for me to contribute there.
Thank you, Siddiqui San, because Afghanistan is one country which I love, and I have had been there with my team on the advice of First Lady of Afghanistan with UN Women, and we have trained a lot of women leaders. They are really passionate, very great people, and I feel Afghan as my home, and they treated us well, and we trained them. We had a plan of conducting training in Delhi and Azerbaijan and Dubai and Bangkok and Istanbul in 2020. Unfortunately, COVID destroyed it. Probably 2021. Beyond COVID, maybe we can go ahead. So is there anybody else who is raising the question? And yes, we have, just a moment, let me see. Yeah, Aftab Saab, you wanted to raise the question. Yes, I unmute you, Aftab Saab. Aftab Saab, are you there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I am here.
Yes, Professor Aftab. Yes, please.
No, I'm just enjoying Siddiqui Saab. Each and everything is just like as it's a great lesson for my students. Really, I'm just listening minutely each and everything. I'm praising a lot. Really, it's like a lesson and just listening from him. Really,
Very
novel
good.
words is coming from it. Really.
invite him to Kanpur sometimes. It was a pleasure to be in Kanpur before COVID.
I will
Yes.
invite.
Any- Is there anybody else who has a question? Yes, we have.
Okay, can I?
Yeah, who is that?
Ash.
Yeah, Ash, please go ahead.
Siddiqui-san, coming from the point when you started, the Maruti started in India, the manufacturing per se was very limited. Cars
Yes.
or automobiles were the only sector there. From then to what we see in the new India now, obviously, I read a report today that India is going to be the leading manufacturer of electronics and other parts for the whole world. Now, again, it will take some time before we get to that level. Is there anything in particular which you have or you can recommend to, say, Government of India? Obviously, you'll be working with different agencies, but is there something in particular to entrepreneurs or manufacturers, new manufacturers, that you have a learning for them to start? And it applies to Australia also, by the way, because we don't have manufacturing here. So is there something which we should take as the guru mantra from you to get into that line and do it properly?
If your question is for bringing this kind of, industrialization, especially the manufacturing sector in Australia, then I can answer it that way. Or you are talking for India as well?
I'm talking for both India and Australia. Means again, you can talk about India to be specific to India for the time being.
Okay, so I think one very interesting perspective which I can talk to you is that many years back, Mr. Bhargav was speaking to me as what is the kind of CSR spending we have from Maruti. At that point of time, it must be 2005, 6, maybe 3-4 crores a year types. So he said, Siddiqui-san, whether you are aware that what has been the biggest contribution of Maruti into CSR, into the Indian, government to this country. I asked what? I was not aware. He says, we have developed the supplier base who are capable of not only making components for Indian car manufacturers, today they are contributing a healthy 30-40% export potential to the global supplier. General Motors, Volkswagen, Ford, and blah, 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 Toyota and Honda and everything. And I was very curious. So I went into a lot of discussions with him. What I understood is that Maruti
थोड़ी देर में फोन
handholded
करेंगे.
the suppliers to pick up
I'll call you a little
capability,
later.
technical capability of making components. Then they gave them the quality perspective, how to come up from the poor Indian quality standards to up, and then cost effectiveness. And then Mr. Siddiqui came and offered this HR effectiveness. So that is how we have handholded our supplier community to come up over the last 37 years. Today they are globally competitive. And when this kind of eco environment you create either in India or Australia, then all the global suppliers will have this tendency and desire to come and invest with you in India. So over the next 2 decades, you will find India will become the manufacturing hub of small cars and medium cars and big cars. That is my forecast. So country has created that kind of an eco environment. To a great extent, whoever wants to become part of this kind of an eco environment today, after 37 years, will have to be extra combative and competitive to be able to make a place for himself or herself in this new regime. New regime is globally vibrant, competitive, and quality-wise, cost-wise, very, very tough to break in.
Very great.
Thanks, Siddiqui, sir.
Thank you so
Thank
much. Ash, we have Vivek Harkoli. I have unmuted you. You wanted to have a question. Vivek has been the global business director with Reliance, with Indorama Ventures, Octal, from Asia, America, and Europe. Lot of Vivek Harkoli.
Good evening, DK. Good evening, Mr. Siddiqui.
Good evening.
DK, thank you for your kind words. I appreciate it very much. Mr. Siddiqui, I have some views, and I thought I'd like you to share those views.
Yes, please.
A decade and a half ago, the corporate world was talking about work-home balance, work-life balance.
Yeah, work-life balance.
COVID has now shifted to work from home. What are your views going forward? Do you think this reverse? Would people think again think in terms of home work balance?
Yeah, that is the issue being raised now. Kind of office
I just
fatigue.
thought to share, I would like your views. What do you think? Would people start now thinking maybe 5-10 years from now about home work?
Yeah, I think you have raised a very pertinent point, and this is being discussed in the corporate HR meets and webinars even right now. So I was part of National HRD Network last week only, Saturday, and just 3 days, 4 days back, and this was a major issue there. So in my thinking, what I will say that anything which is overexposure or in excess will create a problem. Whether it was work-life balance earlier, too much time at work and less time at home and family, and now too much time with home and family, and the related issues are being cropped up there. One very simple this thing is there is this work from home fatigue building in. This fragmented working is making people feel miserable because they want to see their office, their context, their other colleagues, their top management. That is the emotional quotient is being raised now. So in my thinking, perhaps going forward, I think good professional companies will resize, reassess this entire strategy and create an optimum balance with kind of functional merit. What should be work from home and to what extent, and what should be basically essential to work from office or work from factory. Now, currently, production manufacturing operations are mostly 80-90% work from factory only. Only 10-15% they have advantage of work from home. Whereas on the office side, marketing, sales, and HR, finance, IT, that kind of thing, they can perhaps look at 50-50 kind of balancing work from home. But I think each company, each business sector will have to devise their optimum balance post-COVID. What is good for the business? What is good for the people? And that will be a customized perspective I'll recommend. I will not recommend that you put all 80% work from home and reduce your reality cost and make it very, very, big, operating profit going up. And I will not recommend that what ITS is going to do, I think we should blindly follow, or what manufacturing is going to do, telecom should blindly follow. So I think it will have to be a customized version. But as I said earlier, we'll have to be flexible to adjust, adapt, and adopt. Turbulence, transition, transformation, part of the new normal will force you for some of these capabilities which I am mentioning. You cannot dictate your terms in the new normal. Today, DK and I have not met for many, many months. It is strange. He is just next door. We can always catch up. But then because of this life which has undergone a big change, we are all wearing masks and social distancing, and you are scared, I am scared. I think somewhere, I think we'll have to be acknowledging this new social structure, new kind of guidelines, new way of life, not restaurants and this thing which we were pre-COVID habitual. Somewhere things will have to change. I think corporates also related to work from home, work from office will also have to undergo change. And some such redesign we are doing at Maruti very patiently. We are not in any tearing hurry. Maybe by March, April, we will try to come to a customized version, what will work, what will not work. And I think we are also combining employee engagement, employee emotional quotient, employee families into this strategic perspective, what we are going to decide.
I think you have used very keywords which are takeaway from me, like adapt, adopt, agility,
Yes,
environment, family. I think these are key takeaways to me from what you have said. I appreciate your feedback, Mr. Siddiqui. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, DK, for taking my question.
Thank Mr. Vivek Harkoli. We have done a lot of work together in Lithuania and Netherlands when you were the business director and I was the HR person. Thanks for being HR people person. You have really excelled as a people person. I have now 2 questions I can take and we close. Ravinder Kachu wanted to have a question. Ravinder, you have a question quick. And then we have Melanie waiting for a question.
Hi, good evening, Siddiqui-san and Bakshi-san. It has
Good
been a very
evening.
nice session and frankly speaking, very, very eye-opener for the young generation. Actually, you have set an example as you are basically as a benchmark, in your HR fraternity itself. I think it has given an eye-opening for our new generations. Now, my questions basically will be very crisp because as Maruti has been setting benchmarks with vendors, with suppliers, with employees, employee engagement and other things, I think one of the areas maybe where you can thrust upon is, and maybe aware us is how basically the young generation who are passing out from colleges, who are passing out from this, as you talked about the young blood, how you are helping them in developing incubation centers for this automotive business itself. So that we want to see young generation coming it across. Already there are a lot of, I know it's a very competitive world. And as you mentioned itself, the vendors are very, very, it's a quality product we are talking it about. But if we have to promote the young generations and they have a lot of ambitions, we know that. So how Siddiqui-san and Maruti as such is going to help them out in this perspective.
So we have maybe anticipated your question 3 years back. So we started this new initiative where we are mentoring and giving financial support to new startups. We discuss from the students and the very young generation ideas every year, and 5 such ideas are selected. This is being done under the name called MAIL, and this has become a very, very attractive, popular kind of initiative of Maruti into this new space, creating an incubation center for startup companies.
Wonderful. Thanks.
Perhaps
Thanks,
to a great extent, perhaps when we look at within the company, I think we are looking at investing great kind of investment into the build-up of roughly 400 young people every year, engineers and fresh engineers and fresh B school guys. And we started with a very, very positive perspective. When I address them, normally the first week, I meet all of them, and you can tell them that even after joining last 2-3 days, you have made one very big contribution to Maruti, and they all wonder that we don't even knowing the whole company properly, who's exactly sitting where, what contribution we can make. We have not gone to any department. So I tell them that you have brought down the average age of Maruti by a few notches, 400 youngsters, 21-year-old, 19, 20-year-old joining. So all of us have become little younger, 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, whatever it is. That is the kind of positive intent and environment in which the kids are nurtured, and a great kind of interaction with Japanese people or the top management and everything, Mr. Bhargav. That's the internal environment is creating talent for future of the company.
Well done, sir. I think this is going to be another great initiative. Thanks a lot.
That's fascinating. Yeah, Melanie from Spain, you wanted to raise a question. And then Cheryl is waiting. I'll take Cheryl last. Melanie. Yeah, Melanie, are you there? Yeah, Cheryl, you can ask the question in the meanwhile. I'm unmuting you. Cheryl? Yeah, Melanie, are you there? Okay. So I have Siddiqui-san, thank you so much, because it can be an unending process with a person of your personality. There can be unending questions, but then I think I need to stop it because we are already at 7 p.m. IST. Melanie, are you around? And
yes, I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, Melanie, yes.
Okay.
Ask the question, quick one.
Yes, indeed. Well, it's lovely to see you both. I have learned so much. It's been really, really interesting. So just a very, very quick, which is actually connected to the previous question in a way. So this question is inspired by a conversation I was having yesterday with a very, very smart student from a very prestigious university, but I won't say the name. And the thing is, we were talking and she was saying how in spite of having great lectures, great professors, all students were noticing a huge gap between what they were learning at university that was somehow outdated and what they were expecting to find when they actually found a job. So how would you approach that, or how would you recommend students can bridge the gap there, Mr. Siddiqui?
Melanie, good evening. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Lovely to see you again.
Yeah, I think perhaps when we look at this perspective, and DK asked this question of why and how we are motivated to work with National HRD Network and SOCM and CII, with business schools, with engineering colleges. I think one motivation has been to start bridging this big gap. It exists in India also. What we are teaching in engineering colleges and B schools to some extent over the last 2 decades has been revised to a great extent match with the corporate situations, what we require in industry, what a company will require. Although gap is still there, but I think gap has reduced. I think that is one perspective which I am trying to do, and it's a coincidence that Professor Alfredo from Spain has invited me 4th November to talk to his students, because they would like to, instead of a professor, they would like to understand and interact with industry professionals. So I think 20 odd young students or mature students, I am not much sure, but I'll be trying my best to interact with them. Somewhere bridging this gap, I think the answer lies there. But end of the day, academics and corporates will always have a bit of a gap. And somewhere when theories and principles are being discussed, part of academics, that 20-30% remain unchanged. But I think balance 20% need to be changed big way. And with this now kind of digital explosion coming in, digital potential coming in, artificial learning, machine learning, all this, when we talk of AI, ML, boards, everything, it will redefine teaching in any case. Online courses, online programs, flexibility, convenience, rather than a 3-year postgraduate or 4-year undergraduate, all this will get outdated maybe another few years. So this will require transformation. This will require revisiting, reimagining as to what is the need for the next 20, 30, 40 years. What we have been doing, and now we are all almost about to retire, I think that phase will have to go into a transformation.
Thank you so much, Siddiqui-san. So Melanie from Spain, thank you very much for joining. You have been always on women program as well as here. Last question I am taking from Cheryl Gaikwad. Yeah, Cheryl, quick.
Yeah, hi, good evening, Mr. Bakshi, and good evening, Mr. Siddiqui.
Yes, please go ahead.
So I just take a minute of yours that when I was with ICICI Prudential Mutual Fund, I used to handle FMP products, and Maruti was where we used to invest in fixed maturity plan. And one incident where I thought I could share, before ask my question, that when Mr. Bhargava was there, and investment which was done of some approx 200 crores, and the date of the redemption and I got in touch with Mr. Bhargava, and as so silently, and you speak the same way, Mr. Bhargava, knowing and understanding what
Yeah, are you there? Yeah, Cheryl.
I think there's a little weak connectivity, therefore I put off my video.
Yeah, Cheryl is, I think she dropped. She has got some, because I've been in between also, she dropped. I asked her earlier also. So anyhow, I think we need to move forward. Siddiqui-san, I don't know what words to express. It has been a really interesting evening, and your thoughts have been really fascinating. And I'm sure those who are listening now, and I could not pick up some of the questions from Facebook, with a lot of questions here, and those who will be watching later, I think is going to be a precise learning. Before closing, I would request my director, Global Talent Company, Thailand, Bangkok, in Narula, Achan in Narula, to propose vote of thanks for Mr. Siddiqui. Mr. In Narula, Sawadee Kap.
Sawadee Kap, Dr. Bakshi, and greetings to our Guru, Siddiqui-san. How are you, sir, Mr. Siddiqui-san?
Fine, thank you. So kind of you. Privileged.
Yes. Before I even give you a vote of thanks, we would like to give you an open invitation to come to Bangkok anytime. Seriously, it would be a great honor so that we can hold a public hearings of your thoughts.
Oh yes, look forward, I think, post-COVID, inshallah, hopefully.
Absolutely. Yes, so we pray to God that the sky would open up real quick. Well, anyway,
Yes,
let me, first of all, on behalf of all the participants this evening, we like to thank you to no end for your very insightful, thought-provoking, and great ideas. Let me take this liberty to try to sum up Siddiqui-san's discourse this evening. Number one, even if you are number one in the industry, your mindset should be that I am number two and that I need to try harder and work harder. The second thing that I have learned from the discourse this evening, be a listening leader. And that's very important. Listen to your customers, listen to your workers, listen to your stakeholders, respect facts, and very importantly, look after the community that you are in. Now, let me go on further to sum it up. And seriously, what Siddiqui-san has been saying this evening is about the 7 quotient that I have come up with. The first one is intelligent quotient. So you need to be objective, you need to be logical, you need to be adaptable, you need to be flexible. You know, with the digital explosion, you need to always open up your mind to the digital learning, the digital age that is hitting us all. Number 2, emotional quotient. You need to be compassionate. You please be empathetic to the people you are working with. Be kind, be grateful, be disciplined, and have a positive attitude. The third thing that comes to mind is creativity quotient. Please make sure that your people are creative. Mistakes should be allowed so that people will have the guts to take innovation, to be creative. At the end of the day, a calculated risk is always welcome. The fourth thing that comes to mind is moral quotient, morality. This is very important. We are talking about integrity. We are talking about honesty. We are talking about responsibility. We are talking about accountability. Identify, be yourself, be accountable. The thing that comes to mind again, play quotient. You need to be a sportsman. That sportsman spirit is very important. Work-life balance come into mind also. Learn from sports. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. Teamwork, strategize to make sure that everyone is involved. And very importantly, adversity quotient. You must have the ability to overcome whatever comes your way. Identify problems, not the symptom. You know, they are very different. And looking for the most efficient and effective solutions with your team. Involve them, engage them. Social quotient. This is also very important. You must have the ability to connect socially. It's all about people, 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 and people. Ladies and gentlemen, lastly, and not the least, trust, transparency, creditability. Whatever you do, close your eyes and ask yourself, if I do this, will it increase trust or reduce trust? Yeah. If it increase trust, go ahead, do it. If it reduce trust, think again. Don't even touch it. Siddiqui-san, sir, we have learned a lot from you. Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank you.
Entirely my pleasure. So kind of you.
You beautifully summed it up. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Achan, we call him as Professor in Narula. I would like to thank the audience and Mr. Siddiqui from the core of my heart. Thank you very much. Beautiful, powerful,
Thank you.
great session. Thanks for your time. We got delayed, but then, I think there were a lot of good questions and responses was very important. And I thank my team, Varsha, Amresh, for supporting me and all the people who joined from various places. Thank you so much and all the best and good luck. Shabak khair.
Thank you. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye for the both of you, sir.
Bye. Bye.
Ratri Sawat Khap, Achan and Ratri.
Ratri Sawat Ka Pom. Thank you.
Khap.